it's about, really playing by your own rules. And it's about being your authority and doing what you want to do and acting on your desires and feeling capable and empowered to do so.
Hello, hello. Hi, Vibinant listeners. We are so happy to be in your earbuds today. We love you so much. Thanks for tuning in every week. If you're new to the show, welcome. My name is Kelsey Aida. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm a transformation facilitator and best-selling author, and I'm here with my best friend, Lindsay Robinson, who's a hypnotherapist. She's awesome. Please introduce yourself to the people.
You nailed it. Lindsay Robinson, hypnotherapist. I would only add intuitive coach to that, but yeah, pretty good. I'm happy to be here with you all once again. It is a high vibe in it Monday.
Yes. And today we have a very special guest who is awesome. And we were just talking to her about how there's like
So many
literally
things.
a volcano erupting right now as we record this. So very exciting, on the leading edge of life over here at High Five Minute. And I hope you guys all love our guest, Miss Rylee Hedberg. She's a women's rewilding coach and teacher. So we really wanted to have her on to talk about just connecting back to our wild nature as women. And maybe if you're a man listening to this, you can pick up a tip or two and understand women a little bit better. So, Rylee, thank you so much for being here. And please tell everyone more about what you do.
Okay, yay. I'm really excited to be here with y'all. Thank you so much for having me on the show. So yeah, like you said, I'm a women's rewilding coach, and I've been doing this for around 3 or 4 years professionally, but I feel like me as a wild woman, I've always kind of been that type of person. I feel like the term like wild woman, I think a lot of people can get kind of confused as to like what that means and what that really looks like. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's just like somebody's like crawling through the grass and through the mud, and like you've got twigs in your hair and you're wild and crazy and like living on the fringes of society. And like if you want to do that, that's totally cool and awesome. But it's really not about that at all, or at least, the way that I perceive it and what I really help women with. It's about, really playing by your own rules, and it's about being your authority and doing what you want to do and acting on your desires and feeling capable and empowered to do so. A lot of my work really stems from working with the land, being really connected to Mother Nature, because she has been such a big part of my healing journey. When I first started kind of, I guess, like my own like spiritual or healing journey, it really started off with like me going for hikes in the woods. And at that point, I was like going through sort of like a dark night of the soul, if you will. And I was having like a really tough time, right? I was like, who am I? What's going on? I feel like I'm going crazy.
Can I
And I
ask
would
real
go to,
quick, how old
oh
were
yeah.
you when this happened?
So I was like fresh out of college and I was
Yeah,
living on my own. So I was probably like 21, 22.
literally the same thing at almost the same age. I think something
For
happens
you?
when you're like 19. I was like 19, 20, and at that age is when I was like, I'm just gonna move by myself to California, and that's it. Like just huge
Wow.
changes. And I when you as you're talking about it, I also would take like long walks in the woods, and I'm like, I bet you she was young like me when this happened. It's just something that
Yeah.
happens. I think when you hit that age, you're like, I am a full human now. What am I going to be doing for my life? Like, what am I? Who am I? What am I going to do? So
Right.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that is. And I feel like I didn't really know who I was, it would have been kind of like, I was like under my parents' wing, and then I didn't really want to go to college, but they were kind of like, no, you have to go, sort of thing. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going. But I still like felt so disconnected from myself, like
Yeah.
I didn't know what my values were, I didn't know what I desired, and I was super really unhappy. Um and then, when I moved in by myself, like after I graduated from college, I was like, oh my God, it's my time. I can be the person I want to be. Like, I don't have to answer to anybody else. So yeah, I would love to know, like, if anybody's listening, if anybody, has like a similar experience, like around that same age. But I lived in this really beautiful place because I'm originally from the Midwest. So I lived in Wisconsin at that time, and we had beautiful hiking there. And so I would just go out and like hike and be by myself and listen to the intuitive wisdom of Mother Nature around. And I would cry and just like release so much stuff, like from my childhood and like so many like judgments that I had of myself and like wounds and trauma from my childhood. And I just feel like Mother Nature was this just there, right? Like she was like a lending ear for me and somebody that I knew wasn't going to judge me, like other humans sometimes do, right? Because we're human and sometimes it can be really hard to open up and express ourselves and how we're feeling and what we're going through. So for me, that was like such a beautiful time and difficult time, I will say. But that was like really the start of my journey and kind of like what you were saying, Lindsay. I ended up moving to a completely new place like a year or two after that started. I think it was like a year, and I moved to Maui. I had felt like the call. I don't know if you have ever felt that, but it's
Yeah,
just
it
like
was
this pull.
definitely a call. I'd never considered living in California in my whole life. And I was like, for some reason, I have to be here. I have to go. I just have to. You can't explain it to yourself, let alone other people. Your family's like, what are you doing? And I'm from Michigan.
Yeah.
So same thing, Midwest. And
Oh,
you're just kind of like, yeah, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I've spent my time and that's it. And now I gotta be somewhere else. It's just so
yeah.
inexplicable.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of, yeah, it's hard to describe. And a lot of people didn't really understand what I was doing. And I remember my mom was like, "Are you joining a cult? Like, you're definitely joining a cult." Yeah, like she had called my sister and was like, she's like, "I don't know what's going on with Rylee. I think she's joining a cult. Like, I don't know what she's doing with her life." And I was like, "I'm gonna go be a yoga teacher and like travel the world and I'm moving to Hawaii." And she was like, "No, like, you cannot do that." But again, I felt that call and I was like, it's like almost something you can't say no to. Like it is so strong. And I was like,
Yeah.
if I say no to this thing, like I know I'm gonna be deeply unhappy. And I was like, I don't want to be unhappy. Like I've already been unhappy for a big chunk of my life and I don't want to be that way anymore. Like I want to choose for myself what I want to do. And it was to follow that. So I did that and then I moved to Maui and now I'm on the big island. But yeah, I've been living on the islands for over 3 years now. So yeah, that's kind of my story, just a little bit and how I've gotten to where I am today. But yeah, now I have my own business and I do yoga teaching. I have my own courses. I do workshops in self-love and emotional liberation. And then I also do coaching. So I do one-on-one coaching and then I have a mastermind as well. So a bunch of random things and human design. I forgot about that.
Ah,
I'm a
yes.
manifesting generator for anybody that
Sounds
knows
like
what
it.
that means.
Yeah. Just
Exactly.
like us.
That's why I brought that in. Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's why I brought that in because SMGs do so many things at the same time.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you
that's how I
literally
got
do
to.
so many things you forget sometimes. One or two of the
Yep.
things.
Uh, Literally, yeah. And
Literally.
I feel like I always have different interests. So it's like I'm being pulled in like one direction and then another direction, and I'm like, oh, that looks fun too. So let me just add that onto my plate. Okay, here
Yep.
we go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically.
Makes sense. Can you tell
So,
us
yeah, go Kels. I think
Can
we're
you
gonna
tell
ask
us a
the same
little bit
thing.
more about the word rewilding?
Yes.
Because to me, like, I think it's pretty self explanatory. It's like, oh, okay, remembering like your wild nature or like reconnecting to who you really are. But tell us like your definition of that word and why you call yourself a women's rewilding coach as opposed to like, I don't know, whatever other words you could have used.
I Yeah, I guess like the word wild to me, I always really felt connected to that word and maybe it's because I spent a lot of time in nature and kind of like what we were even saying with like the volcano and the lava, it's something that you can't control, right? And that doesn't mean like you can't control yourself, but what I mean is like you are your own sovereign being and like people are going to try to like control you in a way of being like you should do this thing, you should be this person, you should believe this, whether it's like your parents or your partner or your family or society telling you what is like the right thing to do, right? But my whole rewilding journey, because I can only talk about like my perspective, right, was me really listening to like that wild nature within me, like that nature that was like sometimes a little bit like unruly, because nature can sometimes be really calm. We think about the ocean and sometimes she's super calm and she's super peaceful, and we go there to feel peaceful, right? But sometimes she can be a huge storm, right, that destroys a lot of things in her path. So that's what I really really love about like this metaphor of like nature and rewilding yourself. Sometimes like you do need to like really destroy like parts of yourself, parts of your journey, parts of your life that don't make sense to you anymore. And that's okay. Like sometimes it's all right to get messy and dirty and like be in the mud of like your healing. Cause sometimes like it's not all roses and rainbows, you know, sometimes it is like really dirty and murky and like you have no idea where you're going on the journey. But then like, you know, you have more clarity. So I guess that's kind of what I think about, you know, like the word rewild yourself. And I do feel like it's different for every woman. So like I have my experience about what it means, and all of you are going to have like your own interpretation about what it means. But really the essence of it is like, you know, going to like that part of you that you may have lost when you were younger. So, you know, just thinking about who you were when you kind of felt a little bit more like liberated or embodied in yourself, and then, you know, society told you who you had to be, or, you know, experiences happened where you know, for example, for me, like people always told me when I was younger that I was really weird. And I am kind of
You
weird.
know
Like I've
what,
always
Rylee?
had,
You are weird, and we celebrate that here on HVI because it is amazing, and we're all weirdos. The weirdos are the best people.
right,
They really
right,
are.
they are.
I mean,
Yeah, but at
if
the
it's the right
time,
kind of weirdo. I think if you're like Dahmer, that's weird and not good. But you and I
I
and
don't, yeah,
Kelsey, there's a
I
bad
would say
kind of
he's
weird.
like, I guess I would say he's like creepy. Like he's just like
Yeah,
I
he's
don't
just
even know.
like dark and heavy vibes,
Yeah,
and that's not the same thing that we're talking about. We're talking about weirdos, people who don't do things normally, and we need to start celebrating that because what is normal
yeah,
and how boring is that anyway? No,
right.
thank you.
It's like coloring outside of the lines. You're forging your own path, right? You know, like you're going through the woods and
Mhm.
you're like chopping down like this new path because nobody's been on that path before, and people might question you and say that you're doing something wrong, or yeah, like you're crazy, you're weird, but like that's where the best ideas come from, right? You know, like we
Everything
can
that's
think
ever
about,
been invented started as a weird idea.
right, yeah, like people were like, you're crazy to think that that could work, or like that's possible, or like that you could do that thing. Like when I was going to move to Hawaii, people were like, you're crazy, like you're
Yeah.
never going to be able to last there because it's so expensive there, like there's
Yep.
no way. And I was like, I'm going to live there, like I'm going to do it, like I just know it's going to work out. And it was trusting that part of me, you know, like that wild woman part that was like, no, like we're going to do this thing, and like this is like the right path for you, and it's
Mhm.
just really trusting yourself. And sometimes, you know, it's almost like metaphorically like baring your teeth, right? Like setting those boundaries with people that are like a negative energy, right? That
Yes.
aren't really supporting you in your own journey. So yeah, like we could look at it in so many different ways, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's just allowing yourself to just be, you know, your authentic self, right? And sometimes that isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes you're angry and you're frustrated, and to me it kind of feels like just being able to accept that and embody that and really,
Yeah.
you know, feel good about sharing your expressions and your unique gifts with others and not feel shameful or bad about that. So
Right. And the beautiful
yeah,
thing in my situation when I moved was I knew that I was going to move to the biggest city in the United States, whether it was New York or LA. I knew I was going to move to one of those two places because in my head, if I could make it there, I literally could do anything. Like if you can stay here and live here and not go back home, like a lot of people do when they move to a big city and they just can't handle it, I could do anything. So for me, it wasn't really a test, but it was just like yeah, I guess you could say a gauge for me to be able to expand my horizons and see what this human here, is capable of. And for those of you who can relate, like that has nothing to do with anyone else but you. And people are going to say all kinds of things to keep you from doing the thing that you know is going to burst the doors wide open for you in one way, shape, or form that you may not even know yet. People are going to have all kinds of things to say about that. So if you can just hold on to that inexplicable feeling that we were talking about and just know that no matter what, I'm expanding, and no matter what, I know that this is the right thing for me right now, and give yourself the grace to freaking change your mind if you want to, because there's always that too,
right.
you know.
Mhm. I
We
love
don't
that.
let
I think
ourselves
that
do
that's
that.
such a good insight. Yeah, right. Like changing your, like, you know, too, it's like the journey isn't linear. And I feel like, you know, you can again look at nature for that too, right? It's like a lot of things in nature are circular, And then we follow like the seasons of life and of creation. And sometimes you rest, and sometimes you have like more energy to create. And sometimes you're like
Yeah.
wrapping up projects and then sowing the seeds for something new. But there's always cycles that we're going through. And it, to me, like my journey has never felt like a straight path, right? Like I think some people think, oh, I'm going to be able to see where I'm going and it's going to be really easy and I'm going to know
I
what's
thought
going to
that
happen.
for a long time.
Me
I was like,
too.
it's fine. It's going to be a straight path. I'm going to do this and then this and then this, and then everything's going to be fine. Bright rainbow sunshine at the end. And now I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what's going on half the time.
Right? I know, me too. And I feel like, it's just like an acceptance of that, right? Like an
Yeah.
acceptance of, oh, sometimes I don't know where I'm going and there's a lot of unknowns and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think too, with that circular path, like so many of my clients are always like, I feel like I'm regressing. Like I feel like I'm going backwards and not moving forwards. But, sometimes like it can feel like you're moving backwards, but that doesn't mean you actually are, right? Somebody told me this once and I thought this was so cool. It's like this metaphor of a slingshot, right? So you've been doing all of this growth and it feels like you're moving backwards and you're going like into like a
Yeah.
slingshot, right? You're moving back, but really it's just like this energy that's propelling you to like shoot forward into like this new
Ooh, I
area
like
of,
that one.
I know, isn't
That
that
feels
cool?
good.
Right? I can't take credit for that. Somebody told me that, but I thought that was really cool because it can feel like you're just moving backwards or like
Mm-hmm.
nothing is happening. And then all of a sudden it's like all, I don't want to say like all the work, but like the small things maybe you've been doing and working towards, like it
Yeah.
just propels you forward. And then you're like, wow, how did I get here? Like,
Yeah.
this is wild.
And going
Yeah.
back to your
Wild.
point of like everything being cyclical, especially with healing, I know a lot of people, they come to me and they think that they're going backwards because they're revisiting a similar theme, right? Or they're coming up against the same challenge again, or they're still getting triggered from the same types of things. And it's like, just because that
Yeah.
is happening again, it doesn't mean that you're the same as you were last time. This is your invitation to handle it maybe in a new way, or to become more masterful, or to become
Yeah.
more healed. And you're right that it's not linear. It's like these cyclical patterns. So yes, you're going to be revisiting things, but that doesn't mean you're going backwards. And if you make it mean that you're going backwards, you're going to feel bad about yourself
Yeah.
unnecessarily. Instead of
Yeah.
just making it mean, this is the cycle. I'm a part of nature. This is how nature works. Healing is cyclical. And yeah, this is all a part of the process. Doesn't mean you're going backwards.
Well, and we've talked about this before on the show. You at your very core cannot experience the same thing twice. It is absolutely impossible because you are a different person physically, you're a different person mentally, you're a different person emotionally. I don't even care if it was yesterday. You're different. You are different at a cellular level. So it is impossible to experience the same situation twice. So that helped me when I heard that. I was like, oh my gosh, that helps a lot because you feel like, okay, well, I must not have learned anything because this is happening again, but it's not. And the fact that you are aware that this is a similar thing happening again gives you the power to choose differently, to choose something that you maybe wouldn't have if you didn't have all the information that you do now. You know what I mean? So it's a little liberating if you look at it that way.
Yeah, that's super liberating. And I really love that and align with that. Yeah. And I think sometimes we can like focus too on like how much we have to do or like how much we have to climb, or like, how big that like mountain peak is. But it's kind of like you don't really, some people, like we don't really take time to like reflect on like how far we've come, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't turn around and ever say, wow, look at all, like metaphorically, of course, like those mountains I've climbed, like look at all these things that I've done.
Yeah.
It's like we're only looking at, oh, like I'm not here yet in my life. I'm not making this much money. I'm not at this ideal weight. Like I'm not here in my business. So, and really like that's like a scarcity mindset, right? It's like a
Yeah.
lack mindset. And like that's just what you're gonna call in. So that's been really something that I've worked on in my journey is, really like focusing on that abundant mindset and, building evidence that I have come so far and like I've learned so many different things. And two, it's kind of like all the lessons that you're learning are things that are helping you in this moment. And yeah, I really like that a lot. So
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up because obviously what we think is going to cause an internal experience and eventually like an external experience. So if you're always focused on how you're not there yet, how you haven't done it yet, you're always going to feel like you're not good enough, you haven't arrived, like you're going to feel so burdened by like what's in front of you. But to take the time and look backwards, like how you're saying, you're going to have a totally different experience from the same exact point of life where you are. You don't have to
Yeah.
change anything about your life except the direction that you're facing your perspective in that moment, right? So the beauty is you turn around, you look behind and you say, dang, look at all those things I survived. Look at how badass I am. Look at how far we've come. Look at all those mountains, like you said. And that's going to create a totally different internal experience and life experience. And you didn't have to change anything about your life, just the way that you looked at it.
Yeah. It's kind of the quickest way to go from I'm not there yet to I cannot wait until I get there. Because those are two completely
Yeah.
different feelings. And one of them will get you farther, and the other one will kind of make you feel like shit real quick.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
I have a
And
question.
oh
I
yeah,
have a
go
question when
ahead.
you're done. When you're done.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, reflection has been like one of the biggest things in my life that has helped me. Like, I used to do this thing and it was called a soul circle. So I would have women kind of gather around and I would talk to them about like my journey and they would kind of like listen and mirror things back to me. And a girl that was in my circle, she talked about how I never reflect and how I'm always just focused on like the future and like how
Mm,
far I have to go. And I was like, oh my God, like what a beautiful insight. And it's only been like this year that I've really taken time to reflect, whether that's like through journaling or, just talking about all of the things that I've done. And really, I think it comes down to, feeling good about talking about like our accomplishments, right?
mhm.
I think that's a whole nother piece is feeling like, oh, who am I to talk about, all of these cool things I've done? Like, maybe I'm a selfish person for talking about that, right? Or, we might have some beliefs that like I'm a bad person for, you know, talking about myself in this way, right? So that was like a huge thing that I had to uncover too, and just feeling like, wow, like look at how far I've come. I have a lot to share. I have a lot to express and a lot of gifts that can help other people. So I think, if you're listening and you feel like, oh, who am I to be stepping into my power? It's like you already have that power right now, right? And you're capable of so many things. And you don't have to feel bad about taking up space. I think like that's a whole nother thing too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to
Who
share a
are
bit
you
about that.
not to step in your power? Who are you
Yes.
not to do
Yeah,
that?
we need you. We need you.
Yeah, and if you're here taking up space, it's not like of detriment to other people. Like there's a reason why you're here. We're all meant to help each other out and do this together. There's a reason why there are billions and billions and billions of people on this planet. It's not so we can all feel bad and ashamed that we're here. No. We came
No.
here for many different purposes, and even you just existing without doing anything is a part of like the energetic grid that's like taking place on this earth. It's like in the same way that crystals are in and on certain parts of the earth and they're grounding certain energies there, and then it all works together to like solidify everything, is the same way how people are where they are and
Yeah.
why they're there when they're there. It's like we all have our own energetic blueprint, and it's important to just exist and then also do whatever you feel called to do on top of that.
Yeah.
But my question
Yeah.
earlier that I was going to ask, so hypothetically speaking, if I was like a very tamed woman and I was very programmed and I was like, okay, I'm ready to break free. I want to connect more with my divine feminine and nature and just like who I really am. What are like some practices that you would give me, or like some tools or rituals or something that people can start with that's like simple but epic?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing that I really like talk to people about is like their why, because I just feel like your why is like such a huge thing, right? Because so many, people come to me and they're like, I want to meet this goal or like I have this intention, like whatever it is. But they don't actually know why they want it, right? And they don't
True.
actually know like why they want to do it. And I feel like if you're not connected to like why you want this thing, or like the feeling, because I feel like a lot of it is all feeling, right? Like we want to feel
Feeling.
peaceful and liberated and whatever it is. So I always have them connect to the why, and sometimes what they want will actually change because of finding out the why. But to answer your question, so that's like the first thing that I would have them do. A lot of the things that I have women do, an easy one is just to really celebrate yourself. I mean, you would be surprised. I'm sure you
Easy,
two have.
but if you've never done it before, it's like, wait, what?
Yeah. So, within my mastermind and like my group coaching, at the end of every week, I always have everybody like, tell me like, what are you celebrating yourself for? And like, how are you going to do that? And it is like a really easy thing, which is why I'm kind of, saying that, but it's also like really uncomfortable for a lot of people. Cause even what I was talking about, so many of us are kind of like, ooh, who am I to like celebrate myself and acknowledge myself? One thing I just talked to one of my clients about and that I had her do last week was she had just graduated from this course and she didn't think it was worth celebrating because her sister had graduated from like a 4-year university and she had graduated from like a 1-year certificate course. And she was like, I feel a lot of resentment towards my sister because everybody's celebrating her and I feel like nobody really cares about my thing, right? But this was the thing. She hadn't really asked for what she needed. She hadn't told anybody, she wanted to be celebrated like this thing had happened. She just kept it to herself. And then she like was feeling all of these resentments. And when we really figured out is like she was afraid of just like asking to be celebrated by other people. So it's one thing to like celebrate yourself, but it's another thing to like ask for that from other people. And she had a lot of fears around that. So that's what I had her work through like this past week was just like, asking people to like show up for you, right? And to acknowledge you and all of the wonderful things that you're doing. Another thing that I have women do is this thing that I call pockets of joy. So this is really easy and you can really like tailor this to your life. So many of us like we don't allow ourselves to feel joy and to be in like that kid like wonder. And I feel like that's a big part of like rewilding yourself. It's like having your hair be a mess and like I mean, it doesn't have to be this way, but this is like what I picture in my mind. Like your hair is a mess, you're running outside, like you're playing with mud pies or whatever you did when you were a kid, right? It's just like not having a care in the world and like being creative. And, I feel like kids are like so in their joy, right?
Yeah.
So I have this thing and I have people, like make a joy list, right? Like what really brings you joy? And if you don't know, then I usually do a thing where I have them like kind of connect to, maybe like their inner child and what brought them joy, or I have them just kind of experiment and like each day you kind of just like try new things and like take note of that. Like, did I like that? Did that light me up or did that drain my energy? And then once you can figure that out, then I have them make a list. You don't have to make a list, but it can kind of be helpful. And then you schedule it in your week and it's your pocket of joy. So each day, maybe you do like one thing or you do 3 things, or maybe once a month you do a big thing. So for example, like I take dance breaks throughout my day and I just like put on my favorite song and like let myself dance for 3 minutes. And that's accessible for everybody, right? Like I think we all have like 3 minutes out of our day to like take a dance break and let ourselves get wild and like shake our hips and, swing our hair around and just let loose and like move some of that energy out. Um, sometimes I'll like just take time to like read a book or go get ice cream or, go to the ocean, whatever like is bringing me joy in that moment. So I try to keep it like accessible for, everybody so they don't feel like super overwhelmed. But, maybe something that brings people joy is going to travel. And if that's what you want to do, then by all means, go do that. But I do really feel like creating pockets of joy, you can do that in any moment if you want. And it's all a choice, right? To create that joy. And joy, I think, is one of the biggest things that connects us to our wild self because you look at nature and nature, I just feel like is full of joy, like nature's not like sitting there like, oh, I'm doing something wrong and, I need to change myself, right? So, like nature just is what she
All
is.
the best metaphors have to do with nature, right? There's one that's nature
Don't
never
they?
hurries. Nature never hurries and still everything gets done. And I'm like, ooh, I like that. For those of us who feel
Yeah.
like they're always running out of time and there's not enough time in the day, it'll get done. You don't have to hurry and make yourself crazy.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
that's
a funny
definitely
story that relates to the finding your pocket of joy. So the other day, I love moving my body, yoga, dance, Pilates, gym. I don't like running, but lots of other forms of body stuff, I like it. So I was like, okay, I'm finally going to go to yoga. I have the time, not traveling. Like today's the day. I was all excited, right? So I go to hot yoga and I forgot my hair tie, which anyone who's ever
Oh,
tried to do hot
no.
yoga with long hair and no hair tie, like it's a situation, right? But I was like, no, today I'm going to be wild and free. I'll just like let my hair be everywhere. And I was sweating, dripping sweat. My hair is like sticking to me. I'm like, ooh, this is either like really weird or really sexy, but I don't give a fuck. Like, this is me right now. And I was just like getting really wild in my yoga class. But halfway through, I was like dying because I was so hot and I was sweating. My hair was everywhere. And then I was like eating it at some points. It was like getting stuck in my armpit and it became like a situation. And I remembered they have hair ties at the front. So I went out of class, I got a hair tie, put my hair back up, went back into the yoga practice. But it was really funny because I had that exact intention of like, today I'm going to
Love
be
it.
wild and free. And it did feel great for a moment in time.
Yeah.
But then it got a little too sweaty, too hot. And I felt like I was drowning in my hair. So I had to put it up. But I was
I
just
would say
laughing
the
at
hair
myself.
tie is probably up there with the invention of the wheel for its youthfulness. And like, how did people do it without hair tie? How did they do it? Like,
And where
even
do
the
all the hair
Vikings and
ties
the cavemen
go?
and stuff.
Where do they
I know, right?
go? Right? That's the other question. The hair
I
ties and the
know. I
bobby
lose them all the
pins.
time.
They live
I
in
was
a
just going to
land.
say that the bobby pins, where do they go?
Where do
Yeah.
they go?
I don't know.
Right? This is a
Seriously.
problem
Yeah.
that every woman has. Like they
And men
disappear.
with long hair.
Right.
Yeah.
And where do they go? I feel like they go and they all congregate in the land of like the lost hair ties and they're just like all together. Like
They hang out
no
with
one's
the
ever gonna
lost
find
socks.
us.
With the socks that
Yeah,
get
they're like, finally, I don't have to like do work and like, have
Yeah.
somebody's hair, all tied
Our
up.
hair
I can
ties
be
have
free.
all found their wild and they've gone.
Yeah.
Yes, they've
They're like, thank God
rewilded.
I'm free. Yay.
Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.